With a backdrop of a global pandemic, a climate crisis, political instability, and an impending recession, you'd be forgiven for feeling a little deflated and concerned about what's going on, especially as a founder. Trust me, I know the feeling. Throughout the last few months, we've chatted quite a lot about navigating an economic downturn with our 40-minute mentor guests, and they've all shared some brilliant advice. Today, I thought I'd share some of my own insights about how I'm keeping looming worries at bay for myself, the JBM team, and our candidates and clients. As always, I don't have all the answers at all. So if you have anything else that you'd like to add or want to share your thoughts on today's episode, please drop us a line at info@jbmc.co.uk. Before we get into some specific advice, I think it's just really important to remember that we have come through a global pandemic, something that was so unprecedented. We had no clue what we were letting ourselves in for. And despite this, and there were, of course, lots of casualties of COVID and lots of terrible things that happened, but there were lots of amazing examples of people coming together, people innovating, just so many positives that came out the back of the pandemic. So I strongly believe that we can actually come through this recession, not just surviving, but also thriving. So I think it's really important that we go in with a positive frame of mind, but also try and set ourselves up for success. So I think that's something we must hold on to if times get tough in the months ahead, which they're likely to. A few things that I learned from the pandemic that I hope will be useful to you and have definitely sort of benefited myself as a leader, but also our team, is number one, communication. It's one of the first things that can go down in times of trouble because leaders sometimes go in on themselves. I've been guilty over the years of thinking other people can hear what I'm thinking in my head as opposed to actually telling them what I'm thinking and expecting of them. So it's something I'm really working hard on. And over the pandemic, what we tried to do was communicate lots, make sure we were giving lots of transparency about how the business was doing, try to be reassuring where we can, but also giving realistic and honest opinions on things like the pipeline, our cash flow, and various other things. Honesty, transparency, realism. I think all of those things are really important traits that teams are going to want to see from their leaders over the months ahead. If anything, so everyone knows where they stand and that there are no horrible surprises. I think as part of that, having a very much an open door policy is key, and also being really vulnerable. One thing I learned in the pandemic was at times at the beginning of it, I was just trying to be overly positive all the time. And I don't think that was actually that helpful for the team. So the minute that I started to say, I'm really struggling with this too, and I totally understand why you guys would be too. So let's chat about it. Let's set aside time to be vulnerable, be open, share our concerns and our worries and how it's affecting ourselves and our families. And as soon as we did that, it just made things so much easier. And teams really respect that from their leaders when they're open and honest about how they're feeling, because we're all human. So I think communicating often and being realistic in those comms, having an open door policy, and then being vulnerable. I think those are three things that all leaders should be doing in difficult times. Another thing that I really liked from a recent episode of our VC mini-series was when Leila Zegna from Kindred talked about the anxiety balance sheet. Now, this is all about controlling the controllables, a famous phrase in the startup world, but it holds a lot of sway. So I think what she was referring to is in difficult times, you can control certain things, and that's where you should be really focusing your energy. So that's things like your cash flow. It's going to be increasingly important to not be over the top when it comes to spending on things you don't really need, whether that's extra hires or building or investing in technology. There are certain things that are going to be essential for the business, and there are other things, and maybe it's a big event or a marketing campaign. I guess, do you really need to do it? And I think it's really important that founders and leaders are really sensible about where to invest their cash. I guess it's particularly important for VC-backed businesses and just really making sure you're preserving your cash in the right way. You're extending your runway as much as possible so that you can get through this sticky period ahead. You can also do a lot in terms of the morale of your team and really being there and making sure the company is a place that your team want to be. That is something in your control. I strongly believe that. So creating a fantastic culture and really being there for your team, that has a really big impact. But let's be honest, there are a ton of things that are out of your control. A few years ago at JBM, a couple of our clients went out of business unexpectedly, owing us close to 80 grand, which at the time was almost the nail in the coffin when it came to JBM. I couldn't control that, but I spent so much time stressing about it. I've now realized that had a really detrimental impact to my mental health and the team's morale. because I spent so much time worrying about something that I had no influence over. So I think it's really important to conserve your emotional energy, which you're going to need a lot of during a difficult period, and really channel that energy in the right areas. And that's around the things that you can control. I think another thing that has been unbelievably important to me at JBM is having a great board of advisors and mentors just with us every step of the way. That can be to vent to, that can be to get advice from, to get introductions from, particularly if you're a solo founder like I am, where it can get lonely at times. Having brilliant people that have your back, that know their stuff is really, really valuable. And what we've even done is we've used our board of advisors to come actually work in our business fractionally, whether it's a few hours at a time to run certain sessions, or even in the case of Ben, one of our board advisors for SOS, he then came into the business as an interim MD to really help drive the growth of our SOS proposition. So sometimes just having those people to call upon can get you out of a sticky situation, or just help you see the wood from the trees. And that is really important, particularly when you're feeling the pressure. So we've talked about some of the important aspects of what you can do to conserve your emotional energy, to be there for your team and communicate effectively, and to have the right people around you to ensure you can get through difficult times. But the other thing, maybe the more positive spin on this, is it's also an incredible time to keep innovating. Downturns can also be incredible opportunities to seize and innovate. And a good example of this is during the lockdown, when we had to furlough our whole team, where our pipeline dropped off a cliff. We decided to channel our energy in a really positive way. So we launched a bunch of webinars around mental health, around navigating uncertainty from a career perspective, which were really well received. And then on the back of that, we ran virtual coffees to help people with their CVs if they'd just been let go or furloughed. We were trying to do as much as we could for our candidates and community. And then on the flip side, we used the free time that we had, because not many searches were coming in, to launch a new proposition. We used that time to think, what do our clients need? And what we ended up coming up with was SOS, a more cost-effective, more flexible talent solution. And that's gone on to become an absolutely fundamental part of our business. In just 12 months, SOS has actually made up a third of our revenue. And that all came off the back of innovating in a difficult time, the pandemic. So I guess what I'm trying to say is sometimes you can use difficult times to come up with incredible new ideas. It's an awesome opportunity to get your team to think creatively, think laterally, empower them to come to you with suggestions, and a great opportunity for you to try new things. It doesn't have to be expensive. It's going to probably need to be pretty scrappy, but there's no downside, especially if you've got a bit more time to try new things, see what you can come up with. And you never know, it might just be the making of your business, or it could be the pivot that takes your business to the next level. So there you have it, just some food for thought from me over the upcoming months. I hope that's helped some of you, even if it's just a little bit, or some reassurance that you're not on your own. We're all in the same boat here. And I actually think one of the most important things at this time is to keep talking. And that's everything for today, but I'm really looking forward to seeing you on Wednesday when I'm joined by the brilliant Amali de Alwis, CEO of Subac, the world's first non-for-profit accelerator that scales climate impact through data, policy, and behavior change. It's going to be a good one, so I'll see you then.